I'm Ebony Brandon. Today is Thursday, 15th February 2018. This is the SKN News Now Evening Edition. In the headlines tonight nationally, the Department of Labor is being relocated following outcry over occupational safety concerns. Internationally, Jacob Zuma has resigned as South Africa's president. And in sport, concerns are growing over Pyeongchang's Olympic legacy. We've got the details of these stories, the weather and carb update, all ahead in tonight's edition of SKN News Now. The public outcry over the health risk to the Labor Department employees, led chiefly over the past several weeks by Dr. Terence Drew, has resulted in a Ministry of Labor decision to relocate the Department of Labor's Church Street offices. A 2017 Bureau of Standards report indicated that there were high levels of carbon dioxide present in the building during peak hours. It was later discovered that this was the result of a faulty air conditioning system. A number of persons employed at the Department of Labor reported feeling ill, many of whom received medical leave from local doctors as a result of their symptoms. During Minister of Labor Honorable Vance Amory's presentation before the National Assembly in January, he indicated that the ministry's initial response to the report was not to remove staff from the unsafe environment, but to advise them to open windows to improve ventilation. In contrast to the management of the National Drug Council, who shared the faulty air conditioning unit with the Department of Labor, opted to remove their employees from the unhealthy environment. The ministry now says although measures have been taken to correct the situation in the Church Street building, a decision has been taken to move the Department of Labor's offices to a different location. Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Labor, Ron Collins, who was also at the heart of the Bastia High School saga, has said that the new location will be properly sanitized and cleaned before it is occupied. Additionally, new furniture will be purchased for the staff to use, and all workers reporting ill will be referred to a government-appointed physician. There was speculation that the relocation of the department was imminent when, on February 7th, the department announced its temporary closure. Dr. Terence Drew and others, including former Health Minister Honorable Marcella Liburd, were harshly critical of Minister Amory and P.S. Collins for forcing staff to remain in the unsafe Church Street building and for suggesting that staff may have been untruthful about their complaints of being ill. Drew was also adamant that given the potential risks associated with exposure to high levels of carbon dioxide, workers should stay away until the ministry took steps to safeguard their health and safety. And in other news, while banter and crosstalk in parliaments across the world is not unusual, that has in recent times taken a dark turn in St. Kitts and Nevis, where scathing personal attacks have been aimed at the sole elected female member of the National Assembly, Honorable Marcella Liburd, led by Prime Minister Dr. Timothy Harris. The Prime Minister is being condemned for his misogynistic personal attacks on the Central Bastia Member of Parliament. Following her presentation to the National Assembly on the SCASPA Amendment Bill 2018 on Tuesday, rather than addressing her presentation on the bill, Dr. Harris spent several minutes taking personal shots at Ms. Liburd. Speaker of the National Assembly, Honorable Michael Perkins, at no time made an attempt to end the Prime Minister's onslaught. Ms. Libur's parliamentary colleagues on the opposition bench, including Leader Right Honorable Dr. Denzil Douglas, have condemned the Prime Minister's conduct and also expressed a disappointment that Speaker Perkins would have allowed this to take place.
I mean, one of the things I was going to start with, for example, is what was allowed to take place with regard to the honorable member for number 2. Simply because she was forthright, strong in her criticism of the bill. The Prime Minister himself stooped to the level of being abusive, personally abusive to this lady, unparliamentary in a lot of his comments. I mean, these are things that should not happen. And the Speaker heard him say all those things, and never for one moment did he stop him or interrupt him or guided him. Never for one moment.
The woman on the receiving end of the attacks from the Prime Minister, Marcella Liebert, has responded to the situation calmly, however, and has said that she will not allow Dr. Harris to allow her to lose sight of the issues facing the country in relation to the amendments to the legislation governing the St. Christopher Air and Seaports Authority.
Well, I've come to realize that this is who we are dealing with. It happens all of the time. It was during a parliamentary debate that he said that I cut my hair low so that my grey hair can't show. All of that was in a parliamentary debate and speaker. So he certainly has maybe lots of issues with me, but I suspect it comes about because I always tackle the issues in a way that makes it palatable to ordinary people to understand what's happening and to expose what they're doing, which is what I did today again. And clearly, with all the noise they were making, when he spoke, he was never able to address any of the issues that I raised with respect to that port bill. He was never able to say they're not selling the assets of the port. He wasn't able to say that. He wasn't able to say that they're not really opening up, borrowing, just to include unsecured loans and promissory notes. It isn't that the port didn't have the ability to borrow before. No, it did. So if it is that the port wants to raise funds and they already have the ability to borrow, why are you amending that section just to include unsecured loans and promissory notes, which are the least or the most risky form of any sort of borrowing? Why are you doing that? So again, he had no answer to these things. And like who he is, really, is like, the best answer to these things when you don't have any real answers to the issues is to attack people personally.
Meanwhile, Senator the Honorable Nigel Carty believes that Honorable Congress Maynard is deliberately being targeted in the National Assembly in order to create a negative view of him in the public to a blatantly political end. It is no secret that Senator Akila Byron Nisbet is one of the persons being touted to run on Dr. Timothy Harris's People's Labour Party ticket in the St. Christopher III constituency in the next general elections. This would place her in direct battle with Mr. Maynard, who presently is the elected MP for that constituency. Mr. Carty believes that it is part of the PLP's political strategy to attempt to tarnish Mr. Maynard so that Mrs. Byron Nisbet can be represented to the public as the alternative.
Some time ago, I had the reason to say to Congress, I think they're going to come after you because Timothy Harris has one other member of the PLP whom he badly wants to get into the parliament. And I know Timothy Harris. I worked with him for a number of years. And from day one, I was one of the persons to say that he was a narcissistic dictator. He would do anything and everything. And if Timothy Harris is allowed to continue to be the head of this government in St. Kitts and Nevis, we wouldn't be able to recognize St. Kitts and Nevis as a democracy if he were to continue for much longer. So what is happening to Congress is a result of a design and a scheme to get him out and to do all sorts of things to bring disrepute to him, to give Akila Byron, whose husband is running the MRI business over in Boreal, a chance to win that seat. This is patently wrong.
This weekend, the St. Christopher National Trust will stage its annual History and Heritage Walk fundraiser. The event is part of History and Heritage Month activities, which are this year being celebrated under the theme History and Heritage, a conduit to full emancipation. This year, the Journey to Emancipation Walk will see participants move through Golden Rock to Shadwell Estate, ending at Buckley's. As part of the activity, they will learn about the pivotal role that the Golden Rock played in the emancipation of enslaved people on the island, and hear about the lives of the people in the decades following emancipation, including the construction of the Central Sugar Factory in 1912. The ending point, Buckley's Yard, is very significant, as this is where 100 years after emancipation, workers stood up against oppression and refused to work. The subsequent three-day strike changed the course of the island's history and hastened the move toward improved workers' rights. The Journey to Emancipation walk begins at 6:30 a.m. this Saturday from Golden Rock at the Airport Control Tower. In other news, a video recently went viral locally in which a visibly agitated woman was seen struggling with two police officers, one male, the other female. For all her efforts, the Bird Rock woman, identified by police as Karen Herbert, did not escape a slew of charges which stemmed from the police's request for her to move her vehicle from the spot it was parked in on Keon Street. Following her arrest, Herbert was charged with refusing to move a motor car from its parking place when instructed by a police officer, willfully obstructing a police officer while in the execution of her duty, and resisting a police officer while in the execution of her duty. She is presently released on $7,000 bail and will appear in court on March 3rd to answer the charges. One notable incident obvious in the video was when a woman who appeared to be Herbert's companion took out her mobile phone and then appeared to try to record what was happening. The female police officer lunged at her and attempted to grab the phone from her possession. This did not happen, however, as onlookers in a nearby building who were also recording called out, causing the female officer to back away from the woman. The police high command has said in the past that police officers do not have the right to demand that persons stop video recordings in cases like these or to confiscate recording devices. And with that, we've come to the end of our national developments this evening. Still straight ahead in SKN News Now, international developments. Topping international news this evening, Jacob Zuma has resigned as South Africa's president, reluctantly heeding orders from his own party, the ruling African National Congress, ANC. His departure ends almost 9 years in power, plagued by scandal. Famita Miller reports.
A reluctant announcement from an embattled president.
I have therefore come to the decision to resign as President of the Republic with immediate effect. Even though I disagree with the decision of the leadership of my organization, I have always been a disciplined member of the ANC.
It came just hours before Parliament was due to vote in a motion of no confidence against Jacob Zuma. President's hand may have been forced, but Zuma says his party did not give reasons why he should resign. That's despite being embroiled in scandal after scandal throughout his presidency, including accusations of corruption and a court ruling that he had broken his oath of office when he ignored the public protector's recommendation that he pay back some of the state money used to refurbish his private residence. Despite all the criticism against Zuma, the ANC says the decision to recall him was a difficult one to make. Following Zuma's resignation, the ruling party saluted what it called his outstanding contribution and thanked him for the role he played in the ANC for many decades. Earlier in the day, the home of Zuma's associates, a family known as the Guptas, was raided. 5 people have been arrested after an investigation revealed that millions of dollars of state funds were siphoned from a dairy farm project into businesses linked to the Guptas. Next week, the National Prosecuting Authority will decide if corruption charges against Zuma that were dropped in 2009 will be reinstated. And an inquiry into the extent of external influence in Zuma's administration, known as state capture, is due to begin. His removal as president may just be the beginning of Zuma's troubles.
Colombia has deployed the military and stepped up border controls to help combat the number of people trying to cross illegally from Venezuela. They are fleeing an economic crisis which has led to soaring inflation and shortages of food and medicine. Alessandro Rampietti reports.
Colombia's new border controls are making it more difficult for Venezuelans to flee misery in their country and try to make a living here.
The controls are stricter now. It's not as easy to pass things through to sell. And if you make it through, policemen stop you in town and take everything.
Almost 600,000 Venezuelans are currently in Colombia, more than double the number 6 months ago. Many were left living on the streets, doing informal jobs. So Colombia announced it would stop issuing the border crossing cards that let them come and go freely through this porous border. Former chef Jesus Parada has been selling juice on the streets. Confused by the new rules, he discovered his border card was valid for another year. He thinks the new measures are understandable.
I think it's necessary because we need to be sincere. Not everyone that crosses is doing honest work. I think Colombia is lending us a hand. We are going through a very hard period in Venezuela. Colombia is not rich and can't take us all and needs to stop the criminals.
The Colombian police also added these fences in the middle of the bridge to better control those coming and going, the over 50,000 people who cross into Colombia on a daily basis. In addition, the government has sent 3,000 more soldiers and police to jointly patrol border areas. Local authorities in the border town of Cúcuta say the migration is taking an unbearable toll on the city's social services.
Sometimes I hear we're closing the door to Venezuelans, but that's not true. We've issued 1.5 million cross-border cards, and now we'll offer special residency to hundreds of thousands of people. All we're asking is to do things orderly and legally. And frankly, this is Colombia. We can't absorb and give work to millions of people. We're just starting to better the conditions for our own citizens.
Despite the restrictions, last week President Juan Manuel Santos said Colombians also need to be generous to Venezuelans, who in the past received more than 1 million Colombians. How to best do that, while also bringing some order to this mounting influx, will remain a significant challenge.
Still to come in this evening's news presentation, sport, the weather and Carib update. While millions of people across the world are gripped by the Winter Games that have been launched, this does not eliminate the perpetual concern about the legacy for Olympic venues. And with Pyeongchang's Paralympics just around the corner, that question is very much being raised. Lee Wellings has details.
This is the time in an Olympics that hosting can seem like a really good idea. The action comes thick and fast, the excitement bounces from venue to venue, and each host nation medal provides a podium step closer to justification of the expense. But with any Olympic Games, the question needs to be asked, what next? Will there actually be a legacy? Well, the Olympic Stadium project alone cost $109 million, and yet that stadium will be used just 4 times for the opening and closing ceremonies of the Olympics and Paralympic Games. I asked Michael Shin of the Pyeongchang Organising Committee, POCOG, if it's true it will then be demolished. He insists they do have plans for the site.
It looks like a pentagon, and then so we are still having the main building, which can be called A, main building. So after the games, it can be used for a lot of cultural events and activities, like showing something and showcasing something.
Those who closely followed the long journey to this northeastern part of South Korea know concern and apathy usually turns to positivity during Olympic fortnight.
There were all sorts of concerns raised there about the lack of people who were going to be here, the lack of interest, the lack of snow, and then all manner of logistical and organisational things. And I think there's been clearly some teething problems, but generally speaking the crowds have been good, and yeah, I think compared with the last games I was at in Rio, it's been a lot easier.
What about the Paralympics that take place here next month? Is that event going to be a success? Tickets for disability sport can be a hard sell, but the positive vibe of an Olympics can kick-start a ticket surge, and POCOG say they are proud of their sales so far. They also point to the social impact it will have in Korea.
Olympic Games, this is just sport, but Paralympic Games, this will be related to the people's attitude to people with an impairment.
Do you think the Korean people will respond to that?
I believe so.
When the circus departs, reality can sink in that it was a party, not a legacy. But in this region, they're confident Koreans will return here, remember their historic Winter Olympic year, and be proud.
And now for a look at this evening's weather forecast. Across St. Kitts and Nevis, the Atlantic high-pressure system is the dominant feature in the area. However, weak instability coupled with marginal low-level moisture is likely to generate some unstable weather conditions across the islands overnight. Therefore, skies over St. Kitts and Nevis tonight will be partly cloudy to cloudy with occasional brief showers. Tomorrow will be partly sunny with a 40% or moderate chance of showers, mainly before midday. Seas are moderate to locally rough with wave heights reaching 1.8 to 2.4 meters or 6 to 8 feet. Small craft operators and sea bathers should continue to exercise caution. Winds are east to east northeasterly ranging between 12 to 18 miles per hour. The maximum temperature today was 27 degrees Celsius or 81 degrees Fahrenheit. The sea level pressure is 1018.2 millibars or 30.06 inches. The amount of rainfall for the month of February stands at 20.4 millimeters or 0.83 inches. The sun will rise tomorrow at 6:37 a.m. and set at 6:13 p.m. That concludes this evening's news presentation. Now for a recap of our top stories today. Nationally, the Department of Labor is being relocated following outcry over occupational safety concerns. Internationally, Jacob Zuma has resigned as South Africa's president. And in sport, concerns are growing over Pyeongchang's Olympic legacy. I've been your presenter, Ebony Brandon. Thanks so much for tuning in. Up next, Carib Update, followed by DJ Yardi. Goodbye.